We had $30,000 in debt. With this budget and a few really important tips, we got rid of all of our debt and took our dream trip to New York in less than 18 months. Let me help you and show you how you can do it for you and your family. The reality is, I wasn't taught this in school. I wasn't taught this by my parents. I learned this on TV. I spent most of my school days coming home from school, sitting on the couch watching TLC and watching Gail Von Oxlade Till Death Do Us Part. You heard me right. She's absolutely amazing. If you haven't heard of her before, it is a TV show that used to air around 4:30, 5 o'clock. It doesn't air anymore. It's what taught me the basics of budgeting. I took those principles and have literally ran with them my entire life. When I met my husband, he was in a lot of debt, and we decided that it was just time to get out of debt. We had big dreams and big plans, and we just wanted to take a handle on those things and get going on our goals. And with that in mind, I took all these budgeting things that I had accumulated in my wonderful brain over all these years, and I put them on paper and I put them into practice. And within 18 months, we were debt-free. And that seems crazy to say because it was over $30,000, but with a little bit of practice, with a little bit of discipline, and yes, a little bit of losing out and a little bit of FOMO, you can do a lot of things. And you would just have to choose what you want more. What do you want your money to do for you? Those principles are the core of the goals you need to set for your budget. And we have an entire playlist dedicated to how to set goals for your budget. Our second video, which is expenses and income and how to track and all those things. But today's video's focus is how to make your actual budget. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the budget and my budgeting tool that I created, oh my goodness, over 10 years ago now. This is the budgeting tool I have been using. We've done many versions, but this specific one has been the one I've been using for about 5 years now. And it has been my holy grail of budgeting. It's what's kept us on track no matter what has happened. It has been my savior since I've been on disability and since our budget has just was thrown out of whack and I started getting paid once a month instead of bi-weekly. It's one of those things that I don't know how people live without a budget. How do you know where your money's going? How do you know at the end of the month you're gonna be able to pay your bills? Let's get into all of today's wonderful tips. The one thing you really want to keep track of is all of the expenses that come in and out. You want to keep track of every expense diligently because that's how you really know where you're at. And that is completely a huge part of the budget. So we're not just keeping track of the budget, but we're also keeping track of the expenses. And that, I think, is the key of the tool that I have for you guys today. So let's get into the tool itself. I'm going to show you guys the nitty-gritty. So laptops open, there's gonna be a link in the description of this video. This is 100% free. I make this free because I truly believe that there's just not enough really good budgeting tools for people out there. And when it comes to people with disabilities, I think there's enough challenging things in the world, let alone trying to get financial literacy tools costing money. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. So it's 100% shareable now because the form and the sheet is 100% public. please make sure you copy the form and paste it somewhere private because it is fully public. Obviously, I don't want your financial information staying on the form here. So make sure you copy paste it into an Excel doc or your own sheets or whatever you would like to use. But I have added all the forms in here so that you guys don't have to do any math at all. Everything is calculated for you. It's really that simple. So in this first section here, we've got income. And so we have income for 2 people with 2 different paydays. There is room for multiple paydays. Now, if you only get paid once, you can just, zero this out if you wanted to. You can add others if you had, other income. And let's say it's your birthday and you got, $100 from grandma or something like that. You could add more income there. And like you see, the formulas working their magic there. Fixed expenses, I added the standard expenses that most people have. I want you guys to go and play around with this, make it your own, add whatever you'd like. You can change it up, make it absolutely your own, which is why I want you guys to copy this thing and paste it and play around with it. Obviously, the amounts and the formulas are all there to try and make it as easy as possible for you guys. It's here for you guys to come back to. In other expenses, this is in the non-fixed expenses. So you got your fixed expenses. And when we say fixed, we mean things that don't change, things that we don't really have a choice in. In certain circumstances, like subscriptions, when I say subscriptions, I mean, Netflix, Prime, things like that. I put them in fixed expenses because it's something that's reoccurring every month. Now, obviously, it's not something that you need to pay for and you could cancel, but I put it in my fixed purely because it happens every month. It's reoccurring. I put it in there. But other than that, everything else in here is just a standard, needs to happen all the time, fixed expense. Other expenses, these are your variable expenses. You've probably heard this word before. But if you're not sure what a variable means, it means that it can change. So you've got food, entertainment, transportation. Let's say you don't have a car, transportation could be a bus pass, could be taxis. And then you've got the wonderful other category. Now, other category could be things like clothing, anything else that you may need. And then there's the allowance. And this is something that not a lot of people do. And this is something that me and my husband swear by. We give each other allowances and people think this is crazy. But this is a number that we each give ourselves to spend on whatever we want. We don't question it. We don't talk about it. When we were trying to save up for our trip and pay off our debt, we had $50 and Luke's allowance was pretty much spent on Starbucks.
Orange mocha frappuccino!
There was a point when we were doing our expenses, we had figured out that we were spending almost $100 a month on Starbucks. And yes, that sounds ridiculous, but we had a Starbucks literally 5 minutes from our house. And it had become routine. We went to Starbucks and then left and went to work. And it had become our routine. It's just something we did. And so all of our allowances went to Starbucks. And it quickly, because we had reviewed our expenses and we now knew where our money was going, that went away very quickly. We started making coffee at home. We just did things differently because we now knew where our money was going. And so allowance, this number can be completely different for everybody. Yes, Luke's current allowance is roughly mostly spent on Lego.
$37. Awesome!
Everything is awesome.
This is his favorite thing, and that is great. It's a great hobby and he really enjoys it, and I think it's fabulous. And that's the other great thing about doing budgets. Sitting down and discussing finances avoids fighting. And yes, you might fight while creating the budget, going through expenses and figuring out where you want your finances to be. And it might create some tension at the beginning, but once you start communicating and actually having these discussions, you'll find that the fighting slows down or disappears completely. Luke and I never fight over money. We haven't fought over money, I think, since like our first 6 months together because we communicate so well over money. Emergency fund. This is something that if you are in a lot of debt, may not be a reality for you right now. The principles of an emergency fund is to eventually have 3 to 6 months worth of your fixed expenses in a savings account in case of emergency, a loss of a job, something drastically happening to your family. This is the goal. This is something that takes time. We're not going to talk about that today. That could be its own video, but that's what that would be for. A great example of an emergency fund issue, we recently found out that our water bill has been miscalculated and we have almost a $900 water bill due next month. And so we have not fully funded emergency fund as of yet. We're still working on that. So that's something, obviously due to my disability, we had to use a lot of our emergency funds over the last, 3 years of me being on disability. But thankfully, we still have some emergency funds. And so thankfully, that will cover the almost $1,000 random water bill that we'll be receiving next month. We have 3 pets. So we have a pet fund for our vet bills because we don't have insurance for our wonderful furry children. We have a Christmas fund so that we put aside $20 a month in our Christmas fund. It's a savings account that I've got labeled Christmas. And so come December, I don't have some scary $500 bill that comes that I can't pay for. So we've got all these different funds. I have a saving account for each of these funds. And that seems kind of crazy to some people. We don't pay for savings account. There's no extra fees. Most banks don't charge for savings accounts. So I've got 5 or 6, I believe, savings accounts. Each one of them are labeled. They've got nicknames, and I just keep them dedicated for different things. I've got a car one, a travel one, and all these wonderful things. And that's how I stay organized. To the fun part for me, this is the part that really keeps me organized. And I think this is the part that actually brings your budget to the next level. And that's the expenses. I think this is where people lose track of their budgets. And it's because they don't actually track their expenses throughout the month. And actually they create this budget and they allocate $400 to food and $100 to allowance and $100 to entertainment and $100 to gas and blah, 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 blah. But then they go and they spend, $13.40 for a Dollarama and $16.21 because they went and got, a hot dog and chicken fingers because we love doing that at Costco. And then, we went and spent $181.11 at Costco. And so these are just some of the expenses we had last month at Costco. And so these are some of the receipts. Now, it doesn't mean you need to keep the receipts. Now, if you spend cash, you have to keep your receipts. You don't have a choice. If you're a credit card or debit card person, then you can just go through your statements and do it that way. But you have to do it on a daily or bi-daily basis. And yes, I said daily or every 2 days. I know that seems crazy, but if you don't do it that often, you are going to lose track of your budget so quickly, it's not even funny. Now, especially if you're a family. If you're single or in a couple, I know certain people who, only go out a few times a week to spend money and they can get away with doing it weekly.
But it might work for us.
If you go once a week and you tell me you're staying on track, good on you. Honestly, I haven't seen a family be able to do it because you spend just so much constantly. It's never ending. But I would say that the average person has to do it every 2 days to really be able to stay on track of what they're spending. I think we're just such a consumable environment, and it's just one of those things that we just have to see our budgets constantly to keep it top of mind, especially in the beginning. I can go a week without seeing my budget now, but I've been doing this for 10 years. If I don't do it every week, I still will sometimes lose track of where I'm at. Trust me when I say you have to do it daily, especially if you're starting, because you just have to keep it top of mind. Where are you at? What are the goals? What are you trying to accomplish? Because if you're not working on your goals, money is such a critical thing. And it's not a negative thing, but it's an important thing. And it's a tool for you to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. And it's the tool that will get you there the fastest. So with that being said, this tracks every expense in each of your main categories for your allotted expenses. And that's it. Everything gets tracked accordingly. Everything is calculated. It's in the link down below. I hope that answers all of your questions. Like I said, if it doesn't, please leave a comment down below. We tried to make this forum as concise and the least complicated as possible while keeping everything on one form so that your budget and your expenses are all together. One snapshot, you know exactly where you are. You and your spouse or yourself can just keep everything on track so you can get to your goals that much faster. I hope today has been an informative video for you. Budgeting is just one of those things that holds a very dear place in my heart. If you haven't seen our expense video and you haven't done the exercise in that video, you have to do it before you start the budgeting sheet. Check it out over here, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to slow your roll.